So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last Thursday seminar in this year. Our guest today will be Viktor Vajda Pasisnychenko. For those who don't know, Viktor is or was professor of sociology and political sciences at the National Pedagogical University in Kharkiv. And in February 22, when Russia started its military expansion to the West Ukraine is the first victim of. Viktor was able to escape and he came to Prague, where fortunately the Academy of Sciences just started its fellowship researchers at risk for researchers and PhD students from Ukraine. So Viktor could become a part of it and a member of the CTS. This program will be terminated now in December 31. We hope that next spring some continuation will start, but so far I have no details. But anyway, today Viktor is still a member of the CTS, and he will speak about the change of scientific paradigm and its implications for social theory. I just remind you that last autumn, Viktor had a seminar here on a similar topic. The discussion then brought several questions and imposes, so I suppose we will get today a more differentiated account of about the problems. So, Viktor, welcome. The floor is yours. I suppose you prefer the discussion after the end of your presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
It could be better. Yeah.
So,
thank you. Well, morning, everybody. Yes, and happy to be with you. And though my duration of the program is going to finish, it will not be finished for me. So, well. The choice of this research topic was somewhat unexpected for me, as was my arrival in Prague in March 22. Perhaps it was a dramatic experience and as a new stage in my life that have predetermined this choice of a new subject. Ironically, it's an old problematic of the late 19th related to my study of the idea of synthesis of science and religion in Western scientific discourse. At the time, this analysis supposed to be mainly critical, but my own lessons were not only positive, they largely influenced preferences in the research of my interest that followed. I later followed. As for a person with a Soviet historical education, it was a revelation to me how much fundamentals in the natural science influenced the assumptions in social theory. I realized the artificiality of the opposition, the need for a coherent vision of science, and the complementarity of its relationships with religion. In this context, relying upon Kuhn's notion of scientific paradigm, I try to make a distinction and comparison between quantum, Newtonian and quantum scientific paradigms, or in the more broad sense, between classical and new scientific paradigms. The motivation was to explore these paradigms in their impact on the social theory, but I encountered serious problems at the time. Fruitful discussion on this topic were possible only in the audience of representatives of the natural sciences. On the other hand, I have been confronted with total unwillingness to engage in dialogue on the part of my colleagues because social theories have been dominated by positivistic and empirical approaches. Even after several decades, it's still an urgent problem. When we talk about paradigm shift, it's not only about social theory, it affects policymaking, public discourse, education, and even military doctrines as well. Unfortunately, almost 2 years of the Russian war in Ukraine have aggravated the situation, and not only in Ukraine. Symbolic in this respect is an alarmist article published in The Economist on the 30th of November. It is entitled, "Putin seems to be winning the war in Ukraine for now." It's important to emphasize for now, but just as important is its subtitle. His biggest assertion is Europe's lack of strategic vision. It should be added that this problem also applies to the United States. In the Ukrainian case, its internal problems manifested themselves, especially those related to corruption. They were aggravated by an external factor. The practice of under-delivery of Western weapons, their insufficient quantity, and restriction on strikes on Russian territory was established. In fact, it means that Ukraine received so much assistance that it didn't lose, but not enough to win. There were also problems with the summer offensive when General Zaluzhny first had to refuse NATO recommendation, and then at some moment even cut off communication with the US commander in Europe. Now, military experts acknowledge the outdating of Western military doctrines and indicate concern about American and especially European armies. Plus a limited capacity to produce ammunition when, for example, South Korea has manufactured more than 300 shells in 1 month, while the 27 countries of the EU has done these for 6 months. Recently, I came about interesting discussion on the subject among Czech militaries. Lieutenant General Karel Reška declared that the worst enemy for us is not Russia, but ourselves. And he is alarming about missing their Western will and a brutal and non-willingness to get away from brutal Western comfort. According to him, it would be suicidal for Czech Republic to succumb to fatigue from the conflict in Ukraine. However, his colleague from the head scarf, Jerry Heineck, clearly disagrees with him. He claims that the West is definitely unable to compete with Russia in terms of volumes of artillery ammunition production. At the same time, the collective West itself has suffered significantly from the lack of strategic vision.
I have a question. I came for the lecture about the scientific paradigms. Is it going to happen or is it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's going to happen. At the same time, the collective West itself has suffered significantly from a lack of strategic vision during the war. It is especially the United States' desire to prevent the escalation of aggression by controlling it and containing of war by Ukrainian borders has led to somewhat opposite results. During this time, an axis of evil has been built up with dictator states. Now they attempt to exhaust the United States by multiplying tensions, zone and war conflicts. As far as America, according to expert views, cannot win it if it's involved in war in at least 3 regions. That is why the new conflict in the Middle East is so dangerous, because violent confrontation between Palestine and Israel separatists has divided not only countries, but the people inside of the countries, including Western bloc. Some European countries are in zone of possible destabilization. First of all, France, where every 10th freshman is Muslim, with percentage age 10%. Germany, about 5 million, 6%. Great Britain in the same figures. Frequently in the Czech Republic is only 0.2 decimal percent. In the Netherlands, Muslim numbers 1,200,000, but percentage is high enough, 7%. It's no coincidence that the Dutch voters on anti-immigration agenda elected their own Trump, pro-Russian Geert Wilders, who had added a headache to Brussels by joining Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. It's a signal of growing erosion of European democracy by the far-right forces. The same disturbing situation is in America. It has also been affected by strong demonstration, including the universities and academical environment. Anti-Semitic demands being voiced in unison with Russian propaganda in numerous appeals from both professors and students. In addition, political bargaining in the United States Congress around aid to Ukraine looks particularly urgent. I have deliberately focused a little more on these signs of crisis and the existential threat since February 22 has imposed on democratic civilized world as well. The collapse of the post-World War II security system, in fact, means a change of paradigm in geopolitics. By the wheel of fate, what the new global order paradigm will be is largely decided on the battlefield of Ukraine. The West, and especially Europe, has for too long relied on the principles of dialogue and compromise as a solution to all problems in the spirit of pacifism. The popularity of the idea of post-imperial Europe and peace self-evidence has created illusions that one can make a deal even with the deal. So now there is a need to find a balance with a different approach, an uncompromising battle for democratic values. This is a battle with Russian Empire, which has already grown into excess of evil. It has to be recognized that so far the initiative is on their side, and the alliance of dictatorship seeks to expand the geopolitical jungle initiated by Putin's attack on Ukraine. If the West continues to act inertly and without adequate strategic vision, it will not enrich Putin's asset and reinforce his belief that it is incapable of real support of Ukraine. It will result in the West's own sleepwalking to a disaster in a new era of international instability and aggression. So the time has come for a profound rethinking of many perceptions in many areas of society, which means that there is a need for a paradigm change in the sense intended by Putin. The analysis of its particular manifestation in the sphere of social theory is even more relevant today. The problem that I want to emphasize is that social theory is still lagging behind in taking on the new challenges and rethinking the old visions inherited from the classical scientific paradigm. In order to encourage this rethinking, I'm going to clarify and compare the basic assumptions of these paradigms. I argue that for both paradigms, albeit in disguise, they have their roots in natural science. While the fundamentals of the classical paradigm has been taken for granted by social scholars, the adoption of new ideas in natural science in a framework of social theory is especially vital. Why I use Kuhn's concept of scientific paradigm for all its controversy? Obviously, it was introduced Obviously, it was introduced into academics and even more into public discourse a long time ago. Its author, in interview, ironically calls himself a physicist turned historian for the philosophical purpose, while being an amateur in philosophy. Along with categories of crisis and revolution, his notion of paradigm is rather rough and unspecific. However, in responding to Margaret Masterman criticism of having 21 definitions of the paradigm, Kuhn highlights two important points. First, a paradigm is what you use when there is no theory. Second, any paradigm analysis that doesn't take into account meaning is untenable, and there are already mentions of meaning change in my structure. From my point of view, this is important clarification of the concept. As for its generality, it might be seen as a point in its favor rather than against. After all, once the general picture has been sketched, details can be added. The scientific paradigm is closely connected with the notion of metaphysical presuppositions, which refer to underlying assumptions and belief about nature of reality. These implicit basic assumptions serve as both the foundation upon which any scientific inquiry rests, and as lenses through which the natural and social scientists view their respective fields. Therefore, the objective is to make these assumptions explicit by analyzing the evolution of science as a shift from classical to new paradigm. The important point is that a deeper analysis of modern science challenges many of the widespread assumptions attributed to the classical paradigm. We can notice that some postulates of the new paradigm correspond to a certain extent to the previous paradigm. Therefore, it is important to identify those that are dominant. It means moving away from treating modern science and its reflection in the classical paradigm as only negative and worthy of rejection rather than reversion. Definitely, Newton's physics has a decisive impact on the formation of the mechanistic paradigm, to the extent that it's often called the Newtonian paradigm. Yes, yet if it's important to understand the role of Newton's physics, then we must also address the Cartesian philosophy of physics. The main components of the Newtonian theory of interaction can be found already in Descartes, although they didn't fit together in the way they were later combined by Newton. Traditionally, the Cartesian vision is also considered as a source of the mechanical view of nature. Another powerful factor is a positivist interpretation of the science and its impact on shaping social theory according to the assumption of the classical paradigm. The relation between the positivist tradition and mechanistic paradigm is one of mutual reinforcement, as it seeks to employ this paradigm in social theory by focusing on observable phenomena and empirical methods. This approach also led to the natural detached stance of positivism towards the subject of social inquiry. And so, the key assumption of the classical paradigm, as mentioned before, is the mechanistic vision. Newton's physics contributed to the idea of the universe operated like a giant machine, and the clockwork universe was a metaphor that summarized this idea. Newton views the world as being composed of the particles, while the laws of physics describe the motion and interaction of these particles. This reductionism, or the belief that whole can be broken down to the sum of its parts, is the next fundamental feature of the classical paradigm. In general, the interpretation of the part-whole relations is the key to understanding the essence of both scientific paradigms. In the mechanistic paradigm, parts make up wholes that function together in machine-like manner. It means that the parts are prior to the whole, with metaphysical explanation going upward from the notion many. The mechanical whole, like a clock, can absolutely be taken apart and then put back together without affecting its function. The primacy of the part of the over the whole gives rise to another fundamental assumption of classical paradigm, fragmentary vision of the world. This fragmentary approach in its turn had significantly impacts on the rigid disciplinary divisions in modern science. It is responsible for a hard distinction between natural and social sciences and multiplying similar divisions inside every discipline. The objectivity of the laws of development is as a basic idea of Newton, and he believed that the laws of physics were objective in the sense that they existed independent of human observer. But the absolutization of this principle led to the formation of objectivism as a next assumption of the classical paradigm. The emphasis on objectivity also means a separation between observer, subject, and observed object. It gives rise to such assumption of the classical paradigm as a subject-object dichotomy, in which the role of subject is limited to observation of external objective reality. In this way, classic science may be seen as a kind of inhuman because it attempts to remove the influence of human factors. Yet this dichotomy is linked not with Newton's physics, but with the Cartesian mind-body dualism. Later, it was developed by positivists in their study of objective world, and naturally they stands to be the subject of social inquiry. Effect-value dichotomy is the next assumption as a consequence of subject-object distinction. It was David Hume who demonstrated the logical gap between fact and values. In such way, science works only with objective facts and empirical evidence, while values are outside its sphere of interest. Therefore, this assumption means exclusion of everything related to value and culture. Universal and objective laws assume a linearity of development based on a cause and effect relations. It's another assumption of the classical paradigm. It is linked with an idea of progressive evolution as a movement through obligatory stages of development. Determinism and predictability, subject-free and value-free classical science often presents the image of scientists in a distorted form as individuals who are solely focused on their research and helpless in other areas of life. Their mechanized form of scientific inquiry may contribute to the perception that scientists lack empathy and emotion. As a result, the revealed fundamentals of the classical paradigm allow us to see the significant correlation with assumptions in the field of social theory. The analogies are especially obvious for those social theories who have been guided by Marxist or positivist theories. Now turning to the foundation of the new paradigm, it's also important to stress that they were shaped by revolutionary changes in contemporary natural science. The most important innovation has created a shift in the scientific paradigm can be found in the physics of microworld in quantum mechanics. Later, these innovations also has expanded on the sphere of chemistry and biology. Just as Newtonian physics became the core of the classical paradigm, quantum mechanics played a decisive role in the shaping of this new paradigm. Quantum mechanical development, in particular, was stimulated by discussion between Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein on the nature of quantum reality. It reflected the fact that the extension of the analytical tradition of classical natural science to the quantum world faces the problem of the so-called strangeness of this world. In this discussion, Einstein presents precisely the analytical tradition within the ontological framework of physical realism. For him, external objective reality exists independently of the conditions of observation. Therefore, he couldn't accept that instead of single accurate description of nature, quantum mechanics offers many incompatible descriptions. Bohr, in his view, on the contrary, proceeds from instrumentalism as the wholeness of quantum phenomena and the concept of complementarity. For him, the behavior of atomic objects depends on the measuring instrument. Therefore, quantum mechanical theory is considered as a tool for making predictions about observation of atomic process, not a description of the external situation itself. Bohr saw elements of physical reality as holistic quantum phenomena and assumed the complementarity of causal and spatio-temporal description. Similar understanding of quantum wholeness is presented in the works of David Bohm. His main thesis is that this wholeness is connected with some implicit order which determines the order of the world of individual objects. An important subject of Bohr and Einstein discussion was so-called the EPR paradox, paradox of Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen. It serves as a proof of the existence of specific quantum mechanical correlation of micro-objects and fixing the phenomenon of wholeness and non-separability. This paradox involves two particles which emanated from one source and are initially linked through a common quantum state. When one particle is manipulated, the other particle experiences a corresponding change in state, even at long distances. This happens due to a special property of quantum mechanics known as superposition, which allows particles to simultaneously exist in multiple states until they observe their own measure. Following Schrödinger, this correlation between particles is known as entanglement. Essentially, the particles that become entangled share a connection that goes beyond physical space, allowing them to interact instantly with no cause-effect connection. This may seem like science fiction, but researchers have conducted experiments that prove this phenomena to be true, not only in case of mentioned EPR paradox. It has far-reaching implications for future technologies development, like quantum computing, communication, and even teleportation. In my previous research, I encountered active speculation by zoologists on this subject. Their argument was that since, according to Bell's theory, there is no explanation of this correlation within classical physics, and this paradox is only one more confirmation of the divine conduction. This argument reflects the real and mentioned above problem. Inadequacy in this case of analytical tradition of classical natural science, coupled with attempts to describe experimental data in the language of classical concept. For example, Einstein calls these quantum mechanical correlations telepathic interrelations of elements of reality. The solution of this problem, as well as elimination of its mystical coloring, requires going beyond the boundaries of classical vision. A revision of part-whole relations in the new paradigm means priority to the whole and relativization of the notions part and man. It is about opening of unique property of the world as an indivisible whole. What distinguishes quantum holism is a property non-separability. It is a property that explains this quantum mechanical correlation. It should be stressed that their nature is not physical, causal, but implicative and logical. The interpretation of these correlations in terms of photon entanglement is typical for a person living in the world described by classical physics. in order to cover the phenomenon of qualitatively different world, the quantum world, namely quantum wholeness. This problematic and implication of the concept of quantum wholeness beyond physics have been and remain the subject of attention of many researchers. They form the basis for shaping a broader conceptualization of the phenomenon of wholeness. Some examples are Paul Teller relational holism, Henry Stepp's objective holism, John Wiley concept of observer participant, Dresner meaning holism. Among other celebrities, it is worth to mention in the exploration of Alfred Whitehead, Michael Herzfeld, Richard Hilley. By the way, Kuhn was much influenced by structural holism's theory of Willard Wine. The use of the concept of wholeness allows us to go beyond the reductionist world of mechanical paths rigidly tied by causal relations. In this sense, holism is the methodological claim that systems are accurately understood according to their properties as whole. It is the very basis, in the very basis of the world, due to its ultimate non-separability into sets of elements, we find the existence of logical connections and interdependence in the sets of probabilities inherent in pure quantum states. And only then, at the next stage, as a result of the actualization of potential capabilities of quantum system, do the usual physical causal connections and dependencies caused by transfer of energy and momentum come into play. The advantage of the concept are that wholeness is real both for experimental situation and for quantum system. It is also accessible to rational cognition, but it really requires a paradigmatic shift in our perception. These indivisible wholes, wholeness exists on the most basic and primary level in all aspects of physical reality. Invoking the feeling and invoking an interconnected whole, which is called the cosmos. Therefore, the idea of holism makes it clear that the order we observe in nature is never coercive or violent. On the contrary, this property of the world as a whole, as indivisible wholeness, evokes a deep experience of harmony and beauty. And this vision of harmony and beauty requires nothing but a sincere sense of admiration and respect. This statement belongs to Whitehead, as is the next citation from him. The holistic concept is based on seeing what has reality and yet seeks a fuller realization. What seems almost unbelievable and yet turns to be the most significant of existing facts. That which gives meaning to everything that happens and yet escapes understanding. This is why I argue the significance of the concept of holism goes beyond quantum mechanics. And there is a strong argument in favor of cultural implications of new scientific paradigm, which also centers around the concept of holism. The opening of the unique properties of the world as indivisible whole is once more a reflection of the paradigm shift from the part to the priority of the whole. This shift was the central aspect, as we mentioned, of the conceptual revolution in quantum mechanics in 1920s. Werner Heisenberg was so impressed by this aspect that he entitled his biography "The Part and the Whole." Such holistic vision inherited by a new paradigm challenges not only a mechanistic, but also fragmentary approach of the classical paradigm. In its turn, it creates a basis for healing the fragmentation of scientific disciplines, because holistic accent recognizes the intellectual irrelevance of disciplinary boundaries and put on the agenda the need for interdisciplinary approach. It is quite obvious that quantum mechanics innovation in the formation of the new paradigm challenges other classical assumptions as well. Above all, it's about revision of objectivism in the understanding of the laws of development and subject-object dichotomy. In the old paradigm, scientific descriptions are believed to be objective, that is independent of the human observer. In the new paradigm, it is believed that epistemology, the understanding of the process of knowledge, has to be included explicitly in the description of natural phenomena. In a certain sense, we are witnessing a shift from objective to epistemic science. A previous belief in the certainty of the scientific knowledge is changed by recognition that all scientific theories are limited and approximate. Heisenberg wrote in his Physics and Philosophy, they often discuss a lesson that has been learned from modern physics is that every concept, clear as it may be, has only limited range of applicability. Later, biologists Humberto Maturana and Francisco Varela has made similar statement. Their idea that there is no fundamental separation between mind and body, subject and object, was a rejection of Cartesian dualism. They also emphasize the importance of the observer in scientific inquiry. The observer and the observer are inseparably linked, and that any observation or description of the world is ultimately subjective. Such statements mean that human factor returns to science. This return and revision of former subject-object dualism is linked with a process where the observer transforms into participant. It is in this sense that John Wheeler employs the term participatory universe. My previous talk was precisely about analyzing this process as a cultural term within a new paradigm. Addressing the implications, its implication in sociology, I argued that this comeback of subject with all its cultural baggage does not only mean that actor returns to science, he returns as a cultural actor. Due to the close connection between the subject, object and value, fact-value dichotomies, new paradigm also means rethinking the previous value-free vision of science. Authors of numerous publications on the subject insist that we should care not only about the role of values in science, but also about the role of science in values. A special role in new paradigm plays system analysis, which is using the notions of system, complex system, living system, self-organizing system. It allows to extend the description of the new paradigm, not only as holistic, but also as organic. Instead of the former mechanical whole, we operate with an organic whole. It consists of parts, but is not reduced to them. And therefore it cannot be decomposed and put back together again without endangering its existence. System analysis also involves innovation from other sciences, in particular chemistry and biology. For example, a new branch, systems biology, aims to understand biological system as a whole rather than just studying individual components in isolation. Complexity theory is a notable example of such innovation, and its notions have developed across a range of disciplines, including even social sciences. Perhaps the most developed and widely cited example of the use of complexity notions in social theory is that of Niklas Luhmann. In his social system analysis, he employs the concept of autopoiesis developed by Maturana and Varela. It is an idea that living organisms maintain and continually recreate themselves in interconnected self-organizing system that is distinct from their environment around them. The interpretation of complexity theory by social scientists is also varied. For example, John Urey considered it in terms of mobility and global issues. He argues for breaking down the division between natural and social sciences, since both are characterized by complexity. Manuel de Landa is focusing on non-linearity. Brian Wine positions complexity theory as a challenge to both reductionism and the denial of uncertainty among science policy making. Sylvia Welby states that distinction between system and environments challenges the conventional concept of society. Gregory MacLean focuses on some version of the chaos. It is known that chaos theory is also a focus of Prigozhin's school in complexity theory, while another branch, Santa Fe school, is more system-based. As a result, complexity theory makes a significant contribution to the shaping the foundation of new paradigm. Finally, science brought back to life in all its complexity should certainly revive the image of the scientist as well. Only in the new model of science does the real responsibility of the scientist arise. And now it concerns every scholar not as an observer, but as an active participant. In conclusion, I would offer a brief version of how intellectual activity in general, not limited to scientists, might be perceived differently in each scientific paradigm. So, in the classical mechanistic and fragmentary paradigm, representatives of intellectual activity, first, are the carriers of objective knowledge and universal truths, which all should be guided by. Second, their monopoly knowledge is based on greater expertise and their authority. Third, the ultimate goal of their use of resources and this knowledge is to secure order and stability in society. In the new holistic and organic paradigm, representatives of intellectual activity, first, do not claim ready-made truths. Second, do not have a monopoly of knowledge. Third, are facilitators promoting dialogue between different communities in order to maintain a dynamic balance of different interests in society. And fourth, the ultimate goal of their activity is to give meaning to the orientations and practices of a given community for its successful self-organization. Depending on which of these statements will be given priority, it is possible to orientate in which paradigm a given person thinks, even without being aware of it. Thank you. Hope you've been not so much suffering listening for the long introduction. Because you understand, I'm Ukrainian, I'm living here, thankful, but my spirit is there, and so so I couldn't expect escape this issue, because it's not just something abstract. It's one of important part of what is going on, and I also share the views of the Czech militaries who are serious about thinking of the situation in Ukraine, because it's really, we are now in the situation of open future. Nobody can say. I, as a Ukrainian, believe in the victory of Ukraine. There will be no other options. But you understand that, yeah, certainly due to my topic, belief is also a very important part of scientific perception. But we also need, due to the old tradition, something feasible, something that is more relevant. Well.
So thank you, and I start to open the discussion with a question. My first question, and this is Just I can see that this connection between the actual situation and the problems you presented. And to your third point, from the points you mentioned right in the end, that you said that in the older classical paradigm, we had a stress on order and stability, where and then in the new we rather prefer a dynamic balance, if I got it right.
Yes.
But I think
sorry, and one more important stress is the role of meaning, because in Russia now there is also strong order, but what is the sense of this order? And so order is certainly an important thing, but this order could have different meanings.
yes, and this is my question, or perhaps both paradigms, as you call it, can be used to establish, say, a rule of law, or to undermine it, because perhaps you can take a democratic society and, under the disguise of promoting dynamic balance, you can sacrifice, try to destabilize it, and vice versa, of course.
I understand that there is pro and contra in this sense, but in my last talk, I've been using the term from Jeff Alexander, binary codes, and we've been discussing about it. That it looks strange that there is such a strict opposition, because we are looking, especially in European tradition, which I stress, for a compromise, for let us say golden middle or something like that. But still, if we look at the final processes, we are facing the problems. We are facing this situation that what was considering before as something middle stop to be middle in order you cannot be democratic and totalitarian. So and it means that the rule of law is important part of this picture, which I try to show through the concept of wholeness. So I've mentioned before that the nature is not violent, that there is a kind of great order. It could be treated in the religious terms, it could be treated in the terms of some scientific theories, but it keeps and when these laws are facilitating this wholeness, this harmony, they are positive. And as far as they are mainly doing just these results, producing these results, I think that this factor is important part of this picture of wholeness that I tried to describe. Yeah. By the way, yeah. Okay.
I would like to ask. I'm not familiar with this area. So could you please give some simple explanation of what is the new scientific paradigm and the classical scientific paradigm? For example, we were speaking
You
about...
mean it in social sciences or generally? Because
In general.
In general, it's just quite clear that the Newtonian and, for example, quantum
Yes.
physics.
So quantum physics is the example of the
new and then the new.
Yes, you mentioned some example in terms of humanity, mankind. It means that that we are all inseparable parts of this whole humanity, and so it means that if you ignore the problems in the other part of the world, in sense it's not my war. By the way, the citizens of Israel just recently were thinking that war in Ukraine has nothing to do with their own life. Now I guess they somewhat changed this. In planetary sense, I believe that if we humans will not decide our problems, these problems could be decided by natural disasters. You can notice that more and more often we are getting information about some unprecedented happening disasters. For example, it was recently it was the biggest storm in Black Sea for 100 years. Yeah, it's just maybe has no relations, but I think that we should think about it. On the personal level, I guess someone had experience to share their feeling of anxiety, threat with his relatives who is at a long distance. So you are, it's okay with you, no problems, but you are feeling that something wrong. It's unconscious feeling, and later you can get information that just at that time your son, daughter, your close relative was experiencing a threat, even a threat to his life. I guess that such incidents happens, and maybe someone of you. Fortunately, I don't wish you. To truthfully speaking, I don't wish you to experience such incidents, but sometimes I guess it happens, and it could be explained in a rational way. So it has something similar to this activity of wholeness. And certainly in my presentation, I was maybe it was maybe somewhat simplified. I had intention to present some other talks more detailed, but due to my health issues in the second year, as a result maybe of my previous experience, it didn't happen, and that's why I've tried to put the key dominant position. And by the way, once more, I want to stress that we are not going about modern science. I mean classical. I'm not using definition I'm using definition classic scientific paradigm, but not as modern, because modern sometimes is considered like contemporary. It means that it doesn't mean that we have to reject the main ideas, assumptions of the modern classical modern science. It's a curious thing, but one author recently writing about holism have found that there are elements of holism even in the works of Descartes. So here it's a good example that we shouldn't work in a manner of rejection of the achievements of classical science. Of course, many these assumptions are still working, including even reductionism, because if you reductionism played a great role in understanding the nature. Linearity also should be rejected absolutely. Even probability you can find in classical among modern scientists. And so what I've been talking about is about which assumptions were dominating in classical vision and how they correlated with the views of social theorists, and how new natural science produce new and provocative assumptions that we have to take into consideration, not refusing absolutely from the previous assumption, but in order to be more adapted to understanding, to meet the recent contemporary challenges. Yeah, and my question to you, what do you think about my thesis that quantum holism theory has such big impact and could have such big impact for social theory? Is it not too, does it sound as too much for you? Because it could be treated also in terms of reductionism. You are talking about reductionism as something that we should put aside, and at the same time you are trying to put new kind of reductionism to the wholeness. So how it because now you are not observer, you are participant. Does it look appropriate, strange, acceptable?
I think it depends what we take from this theory. So if it is just the assumption that we don't have one word, but we have different interpretation of one word. Mm-hmm. So in this case, probably it can be somehow transposed to the total theory, but I'm not sure that in detail it works.
Because here I'm maybe you have noticed, but here I'm somewhat aggressive, becoming somewhat aggressive. I am rejecting the concept of photon entanglement. By the way, it seems to me this year some of the scholars got a Nobel Prize for something linked with it was a subject of quantum computing, and then this phenomena of quantum entanglement was also awarded Nobel Prize. But what I'm trying to prove that it's just the attempt to describe new realities with the help of the old concepts. By the way, the concept of complementarity is also an effort to do this, to reach this goal, but in other way. And so instead of physical and causal relations, I am talking about implicative and logical relations between these separated parts, which originated from the same the same source. So it's an idea that I'm trying to prove, and it's a kind of a metaphysical interpretation, because it's not a physical reasons. It's already metaphysical, because if you are talking not about causal and physical relations, it's physics. But when you are talking about implicative and logical relations, it's metaphysics. And so I've expected to be attacked.
So if I may, I think that one should consider what was already done. And the quantum physics is not pretty new, and I don't see really many efforts to translate it into social sciences. But I'm even not sure that we are speaking about the same thing when you say social theory. I'm not sure that you are thinking of disciplines like sociology or what does it mean finally social theory. But as I can see, in sociology, I am not aware about many attempts to apply quantum physics in its basic ideas to this field. And so it seems to me quite improbable that it would be in the future.
Yes, I absolutely share with you that natural science assumptions couldn't be directly applied.
But I don't think it is the issue. I think even the very broad imagination of this, it's not the issue of the application.
Mm-hmm.
It's the question of inspiration.
Inspiration. Last talk, my last talk was just devoted to this issue of cultural implications of the scientific paradigms shift. And I've been talking just about samples from sociology. I haven't been talking about the wholeness, holism concept. I've been talking about revision of such assumptions as subject-object and fact values. But today I also made a statement that developing the quantum concept of wholeness in a more broad framework has some cultural implications. I've cited Whitehead on this issue, on this subject, and so I just see some inspiring ideas that could be applied in social science and sociology in particular, but it has to be done in not a strict way, but it's kind of implicative influence.
So that the paradigmatic shift in social theory is not something that we can observe that it happens now, but rather something you propose to.
No. I just last time I've tried to show that by taking theories of Jeffrey, Alexander Dulmin, some other sociologists that they are already taking it as a guide for their new vision. So it's not my discovery and invention. It is already almost accepted facts, and now I'm getting more and more publication in the same direction.
Perhaps another question. I think you are still searching for some conceptual tool for dealing with the fateful changes in the world order we are observing today. Do you think this idea of paradigmatical shift and is really
It can help us. Yeah.
Can help us.
Do you find it helpful?
Yes. Yes, I'm sure, because this notion of paradigm is so much used by representatives of different sciences, and it works. I've mentioned about a clarification made by Kuhn that scientific paradigm, it's when you are it's not so about theory, and it's about meaning. Kuhn himself acknowledged that he was using paradigm too broadly, it could be considered as a problem, but in this case, I've said that the generality of this concept could be treated as well. It could be treated as an advantage as well. By the way, here there are some ideas from Kuhn. He is talking about paradigm as a disciplinary matrix with entire theoretical, methodological, and evaluative framework within which scientists conduct their research. So really, this concept and this term is is popular not only because it's popular. It works for not only for academics but for public discourse. But it really opens or gives an opportunity to consider this transition from one state to another state as applicable to different disciplines and even to different spheres of our life. Why I've devoted so much time to these war issues? Because you've heard that there is a crisis in the Western military doctrines. And is it not one more sample of the paradigm change? So when the militaries have to take into consideration radically new conditions of the war which is happening in Ukraine, because they were, so it's the war that looks, from one side, looks like the First World War with trenches fighting and this terrible killing of the thousands of people in this horrifying battle. But on the other side, the drones is absolutely new feature, and Western armies are not ready to such new turns in the war actions. So I'm sure that the generality of the concept, of the notion, gives us some advantages in order to use it, to apply it to different disciplines, to different spheres, and to see this radical need. Often the radical changes are happening, but we are not getting it. We are still, it's a normal psychological situation. I'm not blaming Europeans that some of them are not so much concerned about the war in Ukraine. I've been living in Kharkiv, 200 kilometers from the Donetsk front, starting from 2014. And people in Kharkiv were living like there is no war. So how I could expect that someone in Europe will be so much concerned about what is happening in Ukraine. So this our psychological habit to adopt to the situation and to keep the status quo, it's a normal situation, but it works like an obstacle to understanding that, listen, guy, everything has changed. After 24th of February 2022, the world will never be the same, and it will touch you more sooner or later. There will be no return, and paradigm change could be a useful tool in this case, I hope. In any case, I've tried to share this my hope and my vision with you.
To my own surprise, I have to defend Thomas Kuhn. His usage of the term paradigm is much less broad than yours. It is in fact quite specific, and although it was really successful and widespread, he has never managed to apply the term paradigm as he introduced it to the social sciences, for instance.
Yeah.
Social sciences, I mean, Kuhn's notion of paradigm is related specifically to the dynamics of disciplinary evolution, to the logic of revolutions and phases of normal science. And if sociology was, there was a time when sociology was called a multi-paradigmatic science, which is in itself an oxymoron in terms of Kuhn, because he says one discipline can have only one paradigm at a given point of time. And even though Kuhn was really specific with this, there is a lot of criticism in how many senses he used the term of paradigm, but in a way, in comparison to your usage of the term paradigm, he was quite technical and precise and specific. And the advantage of this is that historical examples, at least some of them, I mean, his theory is hard to relate to the contemporary sciences, but some historical examples of the development of science is graspable somehow empirically with this notion of paradigm. My problem with your usage, so Kuhn never has written about a scientific paradigm in general. He talked about paradigms and how they can help us to explain the dynamics of the development of science. My problem with your usage of the term of paradigm is that I somehow cannot relate it to my own experience, what happens in my field and in other fields.
What is your field?
Sociology.
I'm sociology.
Yeah.
But also with the fields I at least roughly know. I mean, it's such a big piece of food in one's mouth that it cannot really be helpfully utilized. That's my objection. I cannot relate what you said to anything I can observe around me in the world of science. So it's too general. I mean, if you did not distantiate yourself from the Kuhnian notion of paradigm and are trying to pretend that you are using a Kuhnian notion of paradigms, that's a complete mismatch. I cannot understand it. You did not talk about Kuhnian notion of paradigm at all.
Yes, but I understand you also. But here in the preface to the essential tension, Kuhn conceded that he had used paradigm too broadly. It's his own confirmation. So that there could be different interpretations, and by the way, I mentioned that one is of use 21 definitions. So it's disputable, but I understand what we are talking about, and it needs also to be clarified in my future investigation.
He did use this notion of paradigm too broadly. But even then, he used it much less broadly than you. So just realize.
I accept your evaluation.
Okay, so do we have another questions, comments? If not, then we thank you. Thank you very much. And,
I'd like to, it's difficult for me to find the words to express my gratitude to this country, to the Institute of Philosophy, to the center, and for this unique opportunity. It's a kind of miracle for me when you are the status of refugee and then you are transforming into the status of scholar. And certainly I had a previous experience of fellowships, but not like this. They were in a normal atmosphere situation, but this one is very particular, and it makes me to believe that there is really European solidarity, the democratic and Western values are not simply blah, blah, blah. And I believe in these things as much as I believe in the Ukraine's victory. And and especially I would like to thank Piotr Pokorny, my tutor, Jan Frey, who was tolerant to communicate with me and with my somewhat crazy ideas. I remember my first visit to the center and conversation with Ivan Chvatik, and it was a pleasure to speak in Ukrainian with Roman and Pavel Kuba was so kind to host me in his lovely office, where I've been observing the castle.
Castle?
Castle, yeah, sorry. Castle and thinking about it. Thank you very much, and I hope that ending of the duration is not ending of our communication. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah, we hope that this fellowship really did help you.
Yeah. Okay. No. No. It's not a subject for discussion right now.
I just want to. It's no discussion. I just want to reply to what you said, and I hope we keep in touch even after the end of this fellowship. And now at 12, I think we can go to lunch. Yeah.